And the Arthurian round table myth, as the Kabbalah, where we speak about from time to time, is very affirmative to this in the sense that our spiritual work, our endeavor or real quest is not about leaving um, our current state of being. You don't have to get rid of your ego, your conditionings. Um, you don't have to become a completely different person, but it's just that you realize what is um, apart from that, what are the other levels or layers that also make out your identity or who you are.
Hello, Synchronauts. Welcome to another Illusion Roundtable episode with my dear friend and mentor, Mike Bais from Circle of Avalon. How are you, dear Mike?
I'm very well and happy to be with you in our studio, our roundtable studio again. It's been a
Yes,
while, so
today
yeah.
I have the roundtable behind me, and the image that you chose, you will let us know in a moment why you chose that in particular, what we're going to be talking about today. It's
Yeah.
been a while. You've been busy. Tell us, what are you up to, dear Mike? What are you doing right now? What's going on?
Uh, yeah, well, last year, of course, was very busy with the publications of different books. Kabbalah book, The Paths on the Tree of Wisdom, the Watkins publication, the Liturgy book, which is a self-publication of the ASA. I'm happy with that publication as well. And of course, in cooperation with you, the Spanish translation of my first book, Kabbalistic View on Science, Part 1 from 2019. And again, I can't thank you enough. You did a marvelous job there. So it's out there. You're going
Mhm.
to talk about a little bit more with introduction of the slides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this year, not so much writing until now, but doing a lot of teaching, a lot of workshops, and traveling to the UK coming Thursday to do, yeah, like a little tour through the UK. First going to Devon for a roundtable workshop, and then to Glastonbury for a Holy Mass, and a very specific Kabbalah workshop on a theme called the 10th of Meeting. But that's a whole technical story. I will not go into it. And another roundtable workshop at the College of Psychic Studies, a really, really nice place to go to in London, in Kensington, meeting other people. And yeah, so that's until now. More to come in the rest of the year, but this is enough for now, I would say.
So
Yeah.
if people want to know what you're up to, they can go to your website as well, right? And check it out, what's coming up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that is circleofavalon.nl. NL is from Netherlands, but it's in English. And the other one is KabbalahMysticalSchool.com. And you can also find all my posts on Facebook and all my activities there. So that's on the Circle of Avalon or my name, Mike Bais. I have 2 pages there. So yeah,
Okay, so
very much. Yeah.
obviously lots going on. I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to ask you before we started recording. Are you starting to have some online activities as well for those who don't live in Europe, be in the Netherlands or the UK where you're going?
I had a few online events, especially through the College of Psychic Studies.
Okay.
But I haven't planned any yet. But the idea is to pick that up as soon as I'm back from the UK to see what we can do. Maybe even a roundtable workshop online. It's a bit tricky, a bit challenging,
Mhm.
not to be in each other's physical presence, but yeah, we're going to see because
Okay.
there's a lot of requests about it from people
Yeah,
who live far away, and yeah,
yeah, that's the thing that, and I'm really happy to know that what you are teaching and sharing is also reaching, and thanks to the internet, of course, is reaching
yeah,
many different countries and even languages now with the translation that we did for your first Kabbalah and Science book, which I
yeah,
am so happy that you said yes when I offered to do the translation because
yeah,
excuse me, because at least in Latin America, nobody is teaching Kabbalah as you are from that point of view. So it's very interesting, and it's good to make that available for other people. So it's good that we're working, and we're working on the second volume already. I began a little bit with the translation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's good news. Like there are really no boundaries anymore. No, like time space is constricting, and we can just connect like we are right now. So
exactly.
What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to share our presentation. So tell us, dear Mike, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, we did a lot of sessions, some podcasts, like a series before this one. So we are starting with a new theme, which is, I think, a fascinating theme. It's called, as you can see here, The Ladies of the Wells. And apart from that, it's a very beautiful, also a bit of a dramatic, mythical story. Wow. But it has a lot to teach us in a metaphysical and a psychological way. And like all mythological stories, they're timeless. So if we get, we understand how to translate, as it were, or to read the myth, then we know what it may mean in our time, in our life. And this is really an interesting story. So I'm happy that we're going to cover this one.
Yeah, well, I don't really know much about the Ladies of the Wells. I have a bit of an idea, so it's going to be interesting for you to share this information with us. And before we begin, just a little reminder of your different books so that people can go and check them out. So we have this one. This one is the one that you launched with Watkins. Is that correct?
That's exactly true. Yeah. Last year, that's actually like a year ago in February of 2024. And the audiobook there, read by Peter Noble, who has really a very suitable voice. I'm very happy with his participation in it. That came out in last October, it was.
So you can find the printed book or the audiobook for this title in particular, and you can buy it. Like there are many, at least for the printed book, you can buy it at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and all of these other bookshops, no? And also, just a reminder of the other books that we were mentioning before, no, a Kabbalistic View on Science. So these ones you self-published, is that correct?
I did, yeah. It's not a difficult thing these days. So this is published by Circle of Avalon Books. So the Kabbalistic View on Science in 2019, the second part in 2022, and like we said, the Spanish version also last year around, what was it, October, November.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, officially published, but before it's really on the internet and you can buy it, it takes a few months. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not released through Amazon in Mexico yet. Like it's coming, but there are other countries in Latin America, I think, even where you can already find the book and order it online. So these are great gifts. So if you haven't gotten them for yourself and you want to get them, do so. And if you already have them and you think somebody might benefit from any of your books, like it would be a good idea. This is information that brings healing, that brings hope, that brings understanding. So, and it's good to have it also available. So just a little reminder of everything that you have out there so that people can get, and also this is very important that we support self-published authors as you are, because it's like a difficult, and also the topics like this is not like like a bestseller per se, because this is not like a hot topic for many people because they have no idea what is Kabbalah, how it relates to science. So so it's really important that we rally around self-publishing authors like you. So Synchronauts, if you haven't gotten any of these books, please go get them. They are so super interesting. And also, like what we're going to be talking about today, dear Mike, which is a bit of the Arthurian myths. You're also
Yes.
going to start writing a book related to this, right? The Round Table and the Grail. It's a future project coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was writing that manuscript already before the Watkins book. You know this. So I'm intending to pick it up after my return from the UK. But it's quite a volume, so it's almost 300 pages thick already. But it's a rough version, so it needs editing, rereading, co-reading, and different eyes screening the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I hope that I can, well, borrow your help there,
of course,
your expertise there.
Of course. And also, I think that maybe, just like you did with the Kabbalistic Beyond Science, maybe you will need more than one volume, because the Arthurian myths are so rich and powerful. And then the way that you're working with the archetypes of the Round Table and what we're going to talk about, like it's the feminine and the masculine energies. Also, like from the Kabbalistic point of view, it's really, really beautiful. So,
thank you.
Well,
no, you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It needs much more than one volume. Eventually, you can't cover it in one book. Yeah, it's undoable.
That's for sure. Yeah. All right. So let's go into our topic. So we're gonna be talking about the ladies of the world. This is just a little image to introduce, and we're gonna see it again in a few minutes. So tell us, dear Mike, why are we talking today about the ladies of the world? Like, what made you choose this topic to continue our conversation?
Yeah, well, first of all, apart from the Arthurian mythos, where we find this very specific story, and yesterday I was doing a workshop here in the Netherlands, and I was covering this story as well, a certain part of the whole day. And they said, I never heard of this story ever in my life. And well, with all respect, they did read the more popular contemporary books like Marion Bradley. And of course, it has a very specific perspective and viewpoint on the whole myth. But you really need to delve into the classical books and the writers, the poetry of the Middle Ages and late Middle Ages, like Chrétien de Troyes and Wolfgang von Eschenbach, Robert de Boron, later Thomas Mallory, the Vulgate Cycle, it's called, and many, many other texts. Then you find these kind of stories. And why this story is important, at least one of the reasons, I would say, is because it really shows us that the land, the planet, life itself is saturated by spirit. And life itself is a gift, but we shouldn't take it for granted. And we, as a human being, have a part to play in it. As guardians of the spiritual life, of the planet itself, of all creatures. And that is really one of the, I would say, the core themes within this narrative here.
Okay, that's really interesting what you're mentioning, because I feel that right now, I mean, we're recording this in March of 2025.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like the world has, like, it's a nut house. No, it's like the madhouse and it's on fire. And I feel that a huge part of that is precisely our disconnection from nature.
Yeah.
From this is very interesting, because it's a disconnection from nature as the creation, like what we have around us, as you say, the animals and the plants and the earth as a living being. We're disconnected from that nature, but we're also disconnected from our own human nature, because we have been indoctrinated or educated a certain way. We've talked about this in previous roundtable episodes, how putting that in the tree of life, in the Kabbalistic tree of life, like we are in the lower phase of the tree. We're stuck in the halls of mirrors, no, like in the Yesodic part. And because obviously when we are incarnated, we come from very subtle higher worlds, and then we take in density and duality, and we forget who we really are. So I do wonder, what would a human look like without the whole programming, the whole cultural thing? How would we look like if we really were connected to our true nature? But it's impossible right now because we are, as you say, saturated now with all of these distractions, and then technology, which can be a great aid, but at the same time, right now, technology is more like like they're using that to enslave us even more. And so it's this connection from nature, this connection from our own nature, this connection from holistic beings that have a feminine and a masculine side. So we favor one over the other, and we're not even aware. So I think that also mythology is, the role of mythology is we're doing it, or we have the mythologies to remind us of truth, to remind us of who we really are, what we are doing here, what is our purpose.
Yeah.
So getting
and
to
to
know,
retrace our steps to our origin or original world, as it's sometimes been described. And you find this in the Arthurian mythos as well, that there's an original or spiritual world where we can return to, like the biblical Eden, or any name that can be given to it. Like you said, the world's mythologies speak about it everywhere. And of course, we have different interpretations of what that means. And the Arthurian round table myth, as the Kabbalah, where we speak about from time to time, is very affirmative to this, in the sense that our spiritual work, our endeavor or real quest, is not about leaving our current state of being. You don't have to get rid of your ego, your conditionings. You don't have to become a completely different person, but it's just that you realize what is apart from that, what are the other levels or layers that also make out your identity or who you are. And our planet is a part of that. We are not separate from the other creatures and beings, and we're all part of the web of life. So it's a bit of a strange thing, because on the spiritual quest, we move from dependency to independency, only to learn that we are all interdependent.
Yeah.
So there's nothing spiritually separate from each other. But first, we have to get rid of the idea that we stand on ourselves, or we are a separate entity from everything else. And again, that is very related to this story.
Yeah. And in a way also, like, it reminds me of your Kabbalah and Science books, because you're talking also about the macro and the micro. So it's like that, no? Like you say, okay, I'm an individual, but no, you are composed of atoms. Those atoms create molecules. The molecules create cells. The cells create organs. The organs create systems. Like, you're not one individual. Even if you wanted to be just one individual, like, no, you are a whole kingdom of nature walking. So we
It's a
forget
miracle.
that. Yeah, it truly is. And so just as we have our own cells, we are like little cells in the planet. But we are, because of this idea of being individual and being a consumist, and like we're consuming stuff, and we don't care how much we destroy as long as we get what we want.
Yeah.
We forget about this balance. And obviously the chaos that we're living right now is, I would say nature is behind, even nature is behind that chaos that we're living, because it has to go back to a homeostasis. We cannot stay like in one extreme or the other. And so it's really, really interesting how these stories, which are like, I don't know, hundreds of years old, and there are other mythologies that are way older than that, they still apply to us as humans today in the modern world. And yeah, so it's really fascinating to see all of that. So if you want, we can continue with the next slide, and you can tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Where are we beginning our journey today? So tell us.
Yeah. Why with this picture all of a sudden? Because we need to know a little bit more about King Arthur to begin with, and let's say premature story about how he became king. We talked about this in previous episodes, what that means, and of course the story where he and his half brother Sir Kay are actually joining a tournament, and Arthur is his squire, and they are in need of a sword. And at that same time, there is somewhere, some stories say within a forest, others say within like a square in the middle of the city of London at the time, but there is a stone, sometimes an anvil, but most of the time it's a stone. And in it is stuck a sword. Strange. How did it get there? Well, eventually we learn that it's Merlin who put it there by magical means, and there's only one person who can draw the sword from it, and that will be the promised king of Britain. So, of course, a lot of guys try to do this, and they fail. And in the end, the stories differ how Arthur came to the stone, but he could draw the sword from the stone, and therefore he was the promised king. And it was all a setup because Arthur knew already, as the kingmaker, because that's one of his titles, that he orchestrated, of course, the birth of Arthur by bringing the father and mother of Arthur together, so that he would be born and raised by Merlin, not by his parents. And then this was, let's say, the ritual enactment of how he showed the world that he was truly the king. And nobody wanted to go against a mage, especially not Merlin. That would be a bad thing, a bad omen. So that was the token or the symbol, that sword, for Arthur and the developing kingdom of Camelot to show, this is the authority, this is my power as a king. So this is in the let's say the younger days of Camelot, and where it's still a very chivalric bunch of knights. They're trying to do something, to establish something, but really it's still a growing kingdom in that sense. So it's not from the first day a perfect spiritual kingdom upon the face of the planet. Not at all. And Arthur is still young, and he is a bit, impulsive and spontaneous in the sense. So he really needs to learn stuff about it. And this goes eventually to the story also of the Ladies of the Wells, and that's why I chose this little reminder, this little image here, so that we know what we are going to talk about later on when we talk about Arthur and this particular sword. And just to remind everyone who's listening at the moment, and I know that you know, Aida, is that this is not the sword Excalibur. So
that's
the sword that
I was in shock when I learned that, because like everybody thinks that this one is, and I mean, we should do maybe after we finish with the series of the Ladies of the Wells, because surely we will need more than one program to talk about it. But like to talk about the sword. Really, let's talk about the archetype of the sword, because this is very interesting. And when you said, no, that's not Excalibur, like, excuse me? What are you talking about?
Yes.
So that was like, whoa, we need to talk about it. But yeah, sorry I interrupted you, but I was just like,
no, don't worry about it.
It's not. So it's not Excalibur. What is it, dear Mike? Tell us.
Yeah, well, it's a good good idea. I mean, there are many different swords, many different characters within the story who carry all kinds of different swords. But the two swords related to Arthur is this one. So that's say like the sword of ordination for his kingship. Doesn't have a particular name, not that I know of at least. And the Excalibur sword comes later. It comes after the story, so to speak, of the Ladies of the Wells. The Ladies of the Wells story is like essential for the whole eventually development, how Arthur came to have that particular sword, Excalibur. We will come to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we
continue,
I would like to mention just a couple of things that I think are very interesting and are also other aspects of what you're sharing with us in this first slide. And that is also because, and this is very interesting, this is a story that comes up in other stories as well. Like there is this lineage of seers or magicians or witches even, who have the power of foresight, no, of prophecy. Yeah. So because Arthur's arrival was prophesied. And so we have many different stories. Like I was just thinking about Dune, for example. And I was also thinking, for example, obviously Harry Potter is one of the main pop culture references in that. Like there is a prophecy, you know, the chosen one will come. Also in the Matrix, no, you know.
Yes.
So there is this prophecy, but in this case, and I think it's more obvious in the story of Dune and also here in the stories of Arthur, that there is this lineage of very powerful magicians who can see what's coming. So what they do is they start choosing like people from their clans to start like pairing up with people in power so that they will bring an heir. Normally it's a man, not really a woman, but there is a man that will come from the fruit of that union that will bring about the promised land or the Camelot, or like this will be the savior that will bring these people together. But they will put, like, this person will put this particular group into like into a position of power, because that's what really that's what Merlin does. That's also like, for example, talking about the Mists of Avalon. I haven't read the book yet, and I know there's a big controversy around it. We're not going to talk about it right now, but I watched the movie, came out over 20 years ago, and in the movie you can see that it's not only Merlin who is like working, no, like behind the scenes, you know, and manipulating stuff. There's also the Lady of like there is a reason why they're doing that, and so they use prophecy as a tool to like bring that about, but they're really controlling everything. So I think it's also very interesting and important to talk about the role of prophecy into this archetype of mythological stories. No, what do you think?
No, certainly. I mean, again, that's the difference often between more modern popular books and the original stories. I'm not saying that popular books, contemporary books, don't have any value, because, you know, we can also have poets and, writers who continue the stories. That's the whole power behind the myth, is that it's, you know, it stays alive. But of course, it's an art how to write about it. So in the original stories about Merlin, he is not a mage almost at all. He has certain magical abilities, but mainly he is a prophet. He's a seer. And that, at the same time, is one of his, not just his gifts, but also a curse, because he sees things that he can't handle almost. And that's why often he almost gets completely mad and has to flee into the forest, into nature, to be with the trees and the animals, to come to his senses again. So that's how powerful his otherworldly gifts are. And it comes always with a kind of a price, side effects. And you don't see that much kind of Hollywood magic in the Merlin stories. shape shifting, yes, or a changing the appearance or the reality sometimes, like changing the face of a person into the face of another person,
Yeah.
And manipulating certain ideas. That's what is definitely there within the mythology. Yeah, but
Great.
like you
That's
said, much more prophecy and seership.
yeah.
And that goes also for Morgana or Morgan Le Fay, the feminine descendant from Avalon. Yeah.
I was just thinking about how, as you say, Hollywood takes those things and runs away with it, because obviously many of us, when we were children, we would watch the Sword on the Stone from Disney, and it's really amazing to see like how Merlin is doing like a magical duel with one of his foes, Madame Mim, and it's hilarious. And that has to do like the origin. Now that I'm thinking about it, you're saying the origin is that shape shifting ability that he had, but they're pushing the envelope and really like taking it elsewhere, completely different.
Yeah.
And it really changes. So one thing is what Hollywood does with those stories, and the other is like, okay, let's look at the original texts, and even those have contradictions. So it's also very interesting to be mindful about it in a way, no? And but well,
yeah,
I mean, it's
certainly.
like the important work from Merlin, or like his core power or superpower would be being a seer and the shape shifting. So it's interesting to be
Yeah.
noting this. Surely that, I mean, obviously that was what originating the shape shifting power that originated Arthur's conception. So obviously that's a very
No,
important
exactly.
story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. No, I mean, the one of the things that we want to do, or we would like to have as a human species, is to foresee the future. We like to predict things all the time,
Yeah.
like the stock markets or whatever it is, and we never quite get it right. It's more like having a hunch for something, um, or an impulse or an instinct. But really seeing the future, of course, is a great power. And shape shifting could also be seen from a psychological point of view, that you have the power to shift your identity at will. And that's something we don't do. We are often stuck in an ego with different masks or personalities. So you could interpret it that way, saying, the mage within you is the one who, sees through the superficial identities, and he can put on the masks at will. It doesn't happen by, automatically by conditionings and by situations, but it happens because you want to. That's another way of looking at shape shifting, if you understand what that means.
Wow. Yeah. That's really, really, really interesting. Like there are so many layers to these stories that most people
Yeah.
don't look at. So it's really amazing. I think that we're coming together in space to like offer other different points of view related to the myths that we're discussing. And there's one more thing that I would like to add from what you were talking about, in terms of Arthur, when he comes and obviously when he grabs the sword from the stone, he's very young. He doesn't have Camelot yet. He needs to build Camelot. But just like the image that I have behind me, one of the most important parts that helped build Camelot was the Round Table. And I mean, and this is where I'm going to. He couldn't build Camelot on his own. We have talked about this need of this interdependence. We need other people, but it's not only that he needed other people. Camelot couldn't exist without the feminine energy. And we have also talked about this before in other programs, how the dowry from Guinevere, part of the dowry that she brought to her marriage with Arthur, was precisely the Round Table.
It
So
was.
so it's interesting to see how these different elements, are the ones that will help Arthur built Camelot, but he needs
Mhm.
his inside, he needs his queen, and he needs, well, I think that the three main elements would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously the sword, and then the round table, and also
Yeah.
the, the Holy Grail to complete
Mm.
the shrine, no? So
Yeah.
it's important to
Mm.
remember that at the beginning there was no Camelot, but
Mm.
Merlin knew that was coming, that was going to happen. So that's
Mm.
why he started moving things around, and then it would be a process. It's not
Yes.
like, oh, it suddenly appeared magically. No, that's not how it works.
Mm.
We
No.
build by the
Yeah,
feminine
it's a
and
real
masculine
work.
and the other different archetypes and figures that come along during the story, right?
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and the Grail seems to be like an ingredient of Camelot, but of course, it has its own um, existence on a spiritual level. It comes and goes, um, well, for certain reasons that we don't know really. By an act of grace, it appears to us, and it beckons us, as it were, to follow, uh, because it's like a manifestation of spirit. So before that, the Grail appeared at the Round Table. There was no real quest. Again, they tried to establish something, but it was only from the appearance of the Grail that they knew this is what we need to do. We have to follow this common um, goal together, which was at the center of the table for a short moment, and that's what we need to do. Yeah, and well, again, the Grail as a or a cup, the sacred chalice, brings us again back to our story of the ladies of the wells.
Okay, then let's go to the next slide.
Yeah,
We're talking about them.
which is a beautiful slide, and I
Yeah.
think it's one of the most beautiful pictures that I could find ever in relation to this story. So, well, first of all, there's a lot to say about um, goddesses or mysterious ladies in a lot of mythologies all over the world, especially within um, the Western cultures. You see that there are a lot of ladies who have to do with water, in the sense of they are like water nymphs or certain sprites, spirits that have to do with the element of water. They come out of the water, sometimes with not so friendly intentions, but
Yes.
in other stories they do have. And these ladies of the wells, they seem to be extremely benign, not from a moralistic point of view, but they are actually, you could say, the bringers of the essence of life in nature.
Mhm.
So the well can be seen like a pond of water, or literally a well, like a stone circular building, and in it is, of course, water. That's how it is often described. It seems to be like like a regular well, but at the same time, every now and then, mysteriously, these ladies, plural, come out of the well with these cups, and they um, actually surface the earth, like you see here, and they offer what's in the cup to the world. That means wherever they are, when they come to the surface, the grasses grow, the trees flower, and everything bears fruit. The animals are prosperous, and but also humanity. If someone passes by, whatever they need at that moment, they receive from the cup. So, like physical health or hunger or psychological discomfort or grief, whatever it is, this is like a universal medicine that they receive.
Mm.
So, it's a very special thing. Um, and that is something that we can also see, like in alchemy. or in a lot of other stories about this watery essence that cures all disease. Sometimes it's called a certain kind of ambrosia or moksha, or it's called awen in Celtic lore, like the Druids call that, from the I think the Welsh tradition. That's very particular. But we know it as manna, the manna of heaven, the dew of heaven, and again, it has many different names. In this particular story, it's not mentioned as something; it's just there. It is a fluid, and it's being given to the world. And they come and go as they please, or at least we don't know what the reason is, but it seems to be that there's like a natural flow, how they come, how they go. And it seems to me that it has a relationship between, for example, the mythologies of, for example, Persephone, who
Yeah,
in
I was just
certain
thinking about.
stage, she's going to the underworld. That's the stage of life, like the autumn and winter period, when things die, naturally and necessarily. And after that, she comes to the surface again, back to her mother, to Demeter, and everything starts to grow again.
Yeah.
It seems to be related to it, and a lot of these kind of stories. So what we have here is also a story related to Camelot and the Round Table. And again, we're going back to what you also elaborated upon, the early days of Camelot. And on this fine day, in certain texts, it's Pentecost or Christmas, one of those feasting days. And they all come together to discuss important matters. And at that particular moment, there's one person missing. So one seat is vacant, and who is not there? And Arthur says, we need to be complete. He gets a bit annoyed and cocky about it. So it's King Pellinore. Wow, it's not a knight, it's not a lady of the round table, it's a king. So yeah, you can show him. And this, of course, is a very suggestive image. And you see he's quite old, but don't let his looks fool you, because he is a king of the old world. And so he is very experienced, even more so, they say in the story, that he attained the Grail. So he found the Grail. And because of that, he only quests for the quest itself. So there's no other reason to be here than to just live life and just to follow the impulse of life itself. But he found, as it were, the meaning of life within itself. So the Grail is within him. He is carrying or bearing the Grail within himself. And a little extra is that he is often chasing a mysterious beast. And it seems to be that there is no real use of chasing the thing because you can never catch it. But in this story, there's something very particular because King Pellinore is standing at the well like a guard, like a guardian. So, but again, Arthur is annoyed and he wants King Pellinore to be at the well. At the round table. So he summons everyone and says, find King Pellinore and bring him back to the round table. So they go everywhere into the forest, and it's not an easy task because the well is quite well hidden within the forest. But one of them finds eventually King Pellinore at the well and says, well, you need to come back to Camelot because your king asks for you and we need to gather there. And King Pellinore says, can't do. This is the most important thing. This is of great concern that I'm here. And he said, well, there's nothing greater than the will of your king, the knight says. And he says the same thing. So he doesn't want to move. And they eventually have to get Arthur himself to settle the matter. And so he comes up with Merlin behind him, just overviewing the whole scenery. And he says to King Pellinore, I demand that you come back to Camelot and sit at the round table. And he doesn't accept no for an answer. And Pellinore again says, can't do it because this is more important than anything. Arthur doesn't understand anything. He just sees a normal well, a few stones, and he doesn't know what the hell is going on. But Pellinore at that stage, as an old king of the old world, knows exactly what he's doing. So Arthur gets more and more annoyed, draws his sword. That's the sword that he drew from stone earlier on. And he challenges Pellinore to a physical fight. And from the very beginning, Arthur is no match for him. So Pellinore easily parries the blows of Arthur. And at one moment, Arthur is, intensifying his blows. And one dramatic moment, Arthur hits the sword of Pellinore, and Arthur's sword is breaking into 1,000 pieces. And that eventually, you see that little broken sword.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people can imagine what that looks like a breaking of glass. And it just falls to smithereens, as they say in English. And that causes Arthur to be completely shocked, of course, because he has always relied his authority, his kingship, on that particular sword. So here is a very important lesson on the quest for the king itself. But he falls to his knees and doesn't know what to do anymore. He forgets actually about Pellinore and looks at the sword on the floor. And Merlin intervenes with a spell. There we go. This is like also a manipulation. So there's a sleeping spell coming over King Pellinore, just to have enough time to take Arthur away from the scenery. So Pellinore falls into this slumber at the well, no longer guarding. And Merlin takes away Arthur back to Camelot at that very moment. So that's an interesting thing to begin with. I don't know if you have any questions or anything that comes to mind. Otherwise, I just continue on.
No, well, I'm just, it's really interesting to see. What I would say about this part of the story is, obviously, Pellinore he realizes there is a higher will. No, there's the will of God that is asking me to stay here in the well and to take care of it. Like, this is something very sacred that has to have a guardian, and that is me.
Yes.
Obviously, that is like the higher will, the will of God. And then there is the will of the king. And obviously, the king is the representation of God on earth. No, that's what they say. No, like the king is God on earth. So obviously, when Arthur realizes like Pellinore is not paying attention to his king, I have to go and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And so for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the fact that the sword broke, it's because it was a worldly sword. A sword that represents the will of the king, which, because he was not bowing or surrendering to the will of God, he wanted to do his own little ego, mine will.
Yeah.
And obviously, the sword broke because it was not like really following the will of the creator. So I don't know if this makes sense to you. Like, this is what's coming to me.
No. But I think that you're very accurate, and as far as we, of course, can effectively interpret the myth, so that it is also useful for our transformation, our own quest here and now. Yes, I think so, definitely, that he needed to learn from a more ego standpoint in relation to that first sword that he drew from stone. That his kingship is not about his will in the personal sense, but there are more important things. And one of the most important things in the Grail myth is that sovereignty, and this is very much a Celtic key kind of interpretation of sovereignty, is the marriage of the king to the queen or the land. So the king becomes a servant of the land or the earth and all its creatures and people. So that's something that Arthur doesn't understand yet, because the sovereignty is exactly under his feet, at the well. And so it's like destiny that his sword should break to come to a different or another stage within the development of his kingship. Certainly.
Yeah, like he's moving from a more 3D or a more egoic or yesodic, if we talk in terms of Kabbalah, from a more yesodic level where I am just worried about my image and my kingdom and my position of power. But then he has to realize none of these things matter if I am not in the service of something greater than me, which is in this case the land, the people, and the beings, the little creatures that inhabit that space. And he's the guardian, just like Adam and Eve were at some point the guardians of Eden. They were guarding Eden, and now he has to be guarding his kingdom, but he was not aware of that. And I think it also parallels a bit how we mature as human beings, because when we're very young, between being teenagers and our early 20s, we think that the ego is the most important thing, and we have all the energy, and I know everything, no? And then comes around and tells you, you are so cute.
And it lasts for a long time for most of us.
Like
way beyond.
Let me show you the ways of the world. Like it's not how you think it is. And then some people, like Arthur, they do learn through experience what the real role is.
Yeah, and that's definitely there. And also because they have good actually guides like Merlin to show them the way. And one of the you could say purposes of the breaking sword is that he learns how to become independent of the tool itself. So the power of drawing the sword is within him. So he doesn't need the sword so much. He has to realize that the potential, the power is within him. And that's something that we can also learn. And you see this sometimes with little kids with playing with swords or weapons or whatever it is. They really think that the power is within that little
magical
toy.
Object.
It's completely natural. But that's one of the lessons here.
It reminded me right now about the Wizard of Oz, no? Like how actually Dorothy is on her quest because she wants to come back home, and she thinks she needs something external. And at the end, Glenda tells her, darling, you have the magic all the time within you, inside of you, and you didn't even notice. You didn't need the external thing to come back home and do your magic. Like it's all inside of you. But we tend to, as humans, we tend to like give power to the external. And then when that external thing is not there, then we feel like the world is ending, no? Like we are powerless and we throw tantrums and then we are depressed. But we have to remember that our true power is within us. Yeah.
Exactly true. And of course, one or several of the interpretations of what that sword meant or means for us still is our autonomy, our spiritual right to have free will. You have a choice to where to go in life, who to become. And it was and still is a God-given gift. It's the greatest gift that we have been given. that's free will. And, it's not dependent upon an object. So that's definitely one of the lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Wow. This is so interesting. As we said, we will need more than one program to talk, because right now we're just laying the foundation
We
on
did.
the
Yeah.
roles of the ladies of the well. So we will continue this conversation in our next program, definitely. And so I don't
Wonderful.
know if you want to add something else, dear Mike, to what we have talked about. And by the way, I said at the beginning that why did you choose the image you have behind you? Because we haven't talked about it. So why did you choose this one for our program today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, of course, aesthetically, it's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an image like what you could see here is the attainment of the Grail. So it's being carried by angelic hands. For some people, it's like the Grail is floating in the air. But for people who have a different spiritual sight, they could see that it's being carried by angelic hands. And yeah, this is a vision that anyone could have at any moment. It's not just for those people who are on the quest. If your time is there, if you're ready for it, you can have this vision. Not literally, of course, this image, but have an
Yeah.
experience of what the Grail means, which is a direct experience of spirit, or in Kabbalah, the Shekhinah, the Atman, so the divine spark within you, which is always there. It's the most reliable thing that we have in our existence.
Yeah.
So the quest for the Grail is to try to look for that. Yeah. And it's from an otherworldly, heavenly origin. And that's where you came from, and I. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of these archetypes are connected. So wow, that's really, really nice. So anything else you would like to add about today's topic?
I don't think so, but well, you know me a bit. We know each other for some years. So for our listeners, maybe if people are joining us next time and continue with this story, is to really contemplate, meditate upon the symbol of the sword of Arthur, and what it means in their life, and what it would mean if the sword breaks in their lives. Just to go in a little meditation about it.
Yeah, like kind of reflect upon, okay, what would be the equivalent of that sword in my life, and what would happen if it shattered?
Yes.
So that's very interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting homework you're giving us.
Yeah, for all of us. Yeah.
So so you heard that, Synchronauts. So let us know in comments what you think about today's program, and also if you do the meditation, share with us what are your insights about it, because I mean, exchanging information with our communities is very important also. Like, we're sitting in the round table and we would love to hear from you. So that's a great idea, dear Mike.
Very much. Yeah. That kind of thing, what you're saying, that's the oral tradition, and it really matters.
Oh yes, definitely. Thank you so much, dear Mike. Well, we will see each other, I don't know when, because you're going to the UK. So I hope that you have a great time over there, but we will be back, I don't know, in a few weeks, surely. We'll do another recording. And you already have all the information also here in the description of the video. I'm going to leave how you can connect with Mike. If you have any questions, if you want to go into one of your courses, also the books, like whatever, please support Mike in what he's doing, because it's really good. And also that helps us to continue with these programs and to bring more interesting mythological information, that is information that helps heal, especially right now with the whole chaos that we're going through. This can give us like an idea of where can we center our hearts to be able to navigate everything that comes our way.
I agree.
Thank you so much, dear Synchronous. Thank you, dear Mike. And we'll see each other very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.